Welcome back. ThinkCentral Lesson 1-8 on for homework will be about subtracting unlike fractions. Again, anytime you're faced with a word problem, it's always good to unpack it, use our meal strategy, making up a model, coming up with the equation, then solving the algorithm, and then labeling your response. So unpacking the problem, Amy used 19/24 yards of ribbon in her dress, and Jasmine used 15/16 yards of ribbon in her dress. Which girl used more ribbon? How much more did she use? So the first thing that I see on this is the model that they're suggesting is a comparison bar model. So just to draw them quickly, you're going to do something like this, and you're going to have Amy here and Jasmine here. So you're comparing which one of these is greater or less than. Well, right off the bat, I can tell that this is going to be greater because it's much closer to one whole. So I know that Jasmine is going to be closer to 1 than Amy, who is 19/24. So much closer to 1. So I know Jasmine's going to be more. Now I just have to figure out how much more it's going to be by comparing them using subtraction. So when comparing fractions, I always write them vertically. And I notice right off the bat that these are unlike fractions, so we need to find a common denominator for these two fractions and convert them to equivalent fractions. I'm going to go ahead and use the LCM, least common multiple, of these to figure that out. So I've done the multiples of 16 right here. 16 times 1 times 2 times 3, and then multiples of 24 here, 24 times 1 and 24 times 2. And I see that the lowest common multiple is going to be 48. If you don't know your math facts, first study those. Secondly, get a calculator and use your calculator to help you find the multiples of the numbers. Otherwise, it's going to take you way too long to do that by hand. So use a correct tool, which would be a calculator, to help you find the multiples. So now that I found my lowest common denominator of 48, I now use the double rainbow strategy. 16 times 3 will give you 48, and what you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So that's going to be 45 48ths, and 24 times 2 is 48, and 19 times 2 is 38. So I now have equivalent fractions of 45 48ths and 38 48ths, so now I can compare them. Again, use a calculator to help you with the calculations if you don't know these facts. So now that I've figured that out, I've rewritten the problem horizontally. So 45 48ths minus 38 48ths will equal 45 minus 38 over 48, which is going to equal 7 over 48. So that looks like that's the difference between the, and I labeled that with yards. So that looks like that's the difference of the yards that they use for their dresses. I don't think I can simplify this, so it's already a simple fraction in the lowest terms, and that should be the answer. Go ahead and check step by step or view example if you need extra clarification. Next problem, asking a word problem, so let's unpack it. Rami's glass is half full and Will's glass is 3/8 full. Whose glass is fuller? How much fuller is it? So I'm going to go ahead and just draw the model to represent the glasses. There is Rami's glass, and this is Will's glass. And I can tell right away because this is half right here, and this is 3/8. 3/8 is less than a half, so I know that Rami has more in his glass. Now I need to determine how much more by comparing them. So lining them up in order to convert them to equivalent fractions, I end up with 1/2 and 3/8. If you count by twos, 2, 4, 6, 8, you know that 8 is going to be a multiple of 2, so I'm going to go ahead and use 8. So this fraction doesn't change, it remains 3/8. And this is a times 4 times 4. What you do to the bottom, you do to the top. You end up with 4/8. So now I compare these two. 4/8 minus 3/8 is 1/8. And that is how much fuller Rami's glass is than Will's. I'm going to go ahead and skip this problem because it's basically the same as the other one. You see that they're not like fractions. You need to change these both into similar fractions. When it gets to this point, if you already know how to do it, 3/4 is the same as 6/8 times 2 times 2. 3/8 minus 6 that's 3. It doesn't change. 6 minus 3 is 3. So the difference here is 3/8. Again, unlike fractions, here you have fifths and 25ths, so let's count by fives. 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25. So you know that 25 is going to be the lowest common denominator. So we change fifths into 25ths. That's a times 5 times 5. So it is with 5 25ths minus 4 25ths, and that's going to be a difference of 1 25th. So I'm going kind of fast on this, but the strategy is just find the common denominator and then compare them after you make them equivalent fractions. All right, looking at this simple problem here, first thing you want to do is identify are they like or unlike, and we do like it like this. Those are like fractions, so you're just subtracting 11 twelfths minus 5 twelfths is the same as 11 minus 5 over 12, which is 7 twelfths. So very simple problem to solve. You never change the denominators if they're the same, and you don't subtract those, leave them the same. Problem number 10, most important thing here is to unpack the problem. You see that they are both like fractions, but you have to be very careful. Make sure, because we've been subtracting all these fractions, make sure you know it's addition. So you have 2/5 and 3/5, and that's going to equal 5/5. And then 5/5 can be simplified to 1 whole. So the answer here is 1. For problem number 12, they're asking us to compare fractions, which one is greater. A couple ways that we could do this. If you recall from the previous lesson, you could do a fraction bar model for each one to compare. The hard thing here is when you draw a fraction bar model, it's not perfect. You know, your parts aren't exactly perfect. So like that's 5/8, so I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it would be about like this, and 9/16, so I have to create 16ths. And you can see that it's very hard to create 16ths accurately. So something like that, and it's going to be 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, so it's somewhere over here. So this is so close that I would not recommend using fraction bar models to figure this out. It's probably best to come up with equivalent fractions and compare them that way. All right, off the bat, I know the multiples of 8 are going to be 8 and 16. 8 times 1 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, and this is already 16ths. So I'm going to use a common multiple for the common denominator of 16. This fraction doesn't change, it remains 9/16, and this is 8 times 2 times 2. By the way, that dot means multiplication. So anytime you see a dot next to, in between two numerals, that the operation is multiplication. So 8 times 2 is 16, 5 times 2 is 10, so you're comparing 10/16 and 9/16. 10/16 is greater, so 5/8 is greater, and you put that answer there, and then you subtract them to come up with a difference of 1/16. And the final problem for our homework is comparing two fraction quantities. Bet has 2/5 trail mix. Again, I'm going to do a comparison bar model, and Joanna has 3/8, so I'm going to 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of draw it out, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 3/8. Again, the bar model doesn't show us a whole lot because it's not accurate, so the best thing to do is compare them using like fractions. 2/5 is going to change into eighths. No, it's not going to change into eighths. 2/5, so I've got fifths and eighths, so I need to find a common denominator of 5 and 8. So to find a common denominator, I do the multiples of 5. 5 times 1 times 2 times 3 times 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 5 times 8 is 40, and 8 times 1, 8 times 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the lowest common denominator for these is if you just multiply them together. 5 times 8 will give you a common multiple of the two numbers. You can also always do that. You can always multiply the two denominators together and get a common multiple, which would be a common denominator. The only problem with that is you might have to simplify the fraction when you're finished. Alright, it's double rainbow time to get equivalent fractions. 5 times 8 is 40. 2 times 8 is 16. 8 times 5 is 40. 3 times 5 is 15. And we're going to compare these to 16/40ths and 15/40ths. Gives you a difference of 1/40. So they're is 1/40th pound of trail mix more for Betty. Betty has 1/40th more. She has the greater number just by a little bit. All right, remember, fail forward, make mistakes. It's okay to do that. This is homework. This is just practice. Always ask for help. Don't pretend you know something if you don't know it, because it's better to build mastery by admitting things that you want extra help with.